Hello, thank you for joining me for today's SEJ webinar. I am here with Tom Capper, Senior Search Scientist at Stat. Tom, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having us, Heather. Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of an introduction to myself. So I'm, as Heather says, senior research scientist at both Stat and Moz. So I work on a lot of the sort of data and research that goes into the metrics you see in our platforms and goes into sort of our direction with what we're trying to develop around that. And that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is based on that data as it relates to AI overviews. I'm just going to hand over briefly back to Heather for some housekeeping.
Yeah, so like Tom said, he's going to be here. If you're in the right place, if you came to hear about visibility for your brand and the new search landscape and across AI overviews. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to go through quick housekeeping while everybody gets in and gets settled. Use the chat. Let us know where you're coming in from today. I am based in West Virginia. Tom, where are you based out of?
I'm based in Newbury, England, so about an hour west of London.
So it's just hitting evening time for you over there.
It's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, awesome. We will have everybody coming in from all parts of the globe. So whether it's morning or evening or hot or cold, we're so glad that you joined us. So, all right. So, quick housekeeping. If you need closed captioning, it's the little CC in the top right of your screen. Just give that a click. We're going to be doing Q&A at the end of Tom's presentation. So, if you have any questions on the topic that we're talking about today, add those to the Q&A tab or add them to the chat. If you see a question you like, you can give it a little thumbs up, and that lets us know that it's more important, and we'll try our best to front load some of those questions. So give it a little upvote if it's something you're interested in as well. When we start the Q&A, we're also going to open a breakout room. In that breakout room is going to be Chris and Stephanie. They're from the Stat team as well. They're going to do a demo of the Stat platform. And basically, it's everything that Tom is talking about today and how to do it in the Stat platform specifically. So if you're a lean team or you're looking for some help, you might want to check out that demo. So that'll open at the Q&A. Before you leave today's call, we have a short survey for you. It just lets us know how today's topic went and gives us ideas for things you might be looking at learning later. So watch for that at the end. And you'll receive today's recording and slides in your inbox later. So again, all kinds of things to watch for. There's some handouts in the handouts tab. Tom and the Moz team will go over those. And with that, Tom, I've done enough talking. They didn't come here for me. So I'm going to get out of here. It's all yours. I'll see you at the Q&A.
Cool. Thank you very much. So yeah, this is roughly what we're talking about today. So how much we're seeing AI overviews and where on what kinds of search, who is in them, how those search results are kind of behaving, alongside other features and organic results. We're talking about AI-organized SERPs, which is something that Google introduced in the second half of last year. And we will talk about what it means for your SEO strategy, or what I think it should mean. And what I think is going to happen within this year, some sort of near-term predictions. As Heather mentioned, a couple of my colleagues are going to be leading breakout rooms. So it'll be a bit of a choose-your-own-adventure at the end. You can either stay here with me for Q&A, or there'll be a button that appears for you to go through and see more of a hands-on demo of what I'm talking about in our platform. So up to you. So the story that I want to tell to sort of set the scene here starts in spring 2023, and it starts curiously with Bing. Bing were first to the punch on this. I was at SMX Munich in March 2023 when Bing announced what they called the new Bing, which looked like this. So this is an example search in Bing from nearly 2 years ago now, and it has this result at the top, which looks a lot like what we now call an AI overview. And Bing, as I say, Bing was sort of first to the punch with this. Google had nothing that looked like this at this stage. All that Google had at the time was Bard, which is obviously, it's more of a chat GPT-like experience. And there was some attempts to integrate this with search. Like, for example, you see that Google It button at the bottom there. But broadly speaking, Google was caught off guard. They had the tech, in theory, to introduce this to search results for a long time. They had not wanted to do so, or they had not thought to do so. Probably they had not wanted to do so. So it was kind of curious because actually in 2013, so more than a decade ago even then, well, actually, I think about exactly a decade ago even then, Google had launched what they called conversational search, and they've tried to encourage people to update their search behavior and to use the search bar more to ask sort of natural language questions. And it basically hadn't caught on. People didn't want to search in these ways, or maybe the tech wasn't good enough yet. So it was a bit weird for Google now, a decade later, or to be made to look daft by Bing launching something which looked like it might be the future of search. So this made Google look stupid. Even though actually it doesn't seem like Bing's feature was a success. So this has changed again since, but in the year after Bing rolled out this change, and I apologize for the pixelated screenshot because I was trying to find a screenshot from the period, so a sort of 18-month-old screenshot. You don't need to be able to see. I see someone saying it's too small to see. You don't need to be able to read this or anything like that. Don't worry, it's just illustrative. The point is that this red box, which contains the AI result, Bing started pushing that further and further down. So Bing themselves decided that actually this isn't what users wanted to see, and it isn't a good result, or they seemed to at the time. 2 months later, so May 2023, Google launched their own version. And it looked like this. So again, this is a screenshot from the time. Now, this seemed like a bit of a rush job. It basically wasn't as good as Bing's. And unlike Bing's, it was opt-in, US only, beta. I think originally it was Chrome only, logged in only. So, it was, and it was also, it was pretty bad. Now, I'm not saying the Bing one was perfect, but Google took a lot of bad press at the time because their version was fraught with really obvious inaccuracies. To be honest, it still is, but it has got a lot better since. It was also pasted to the top of existing search results with no real attention to what happened beneath. The Bing results felt a little bit more designed, a bit more congruous, whereas the Google results with SGE on the top in the beta, they would have features that sort of directly replicated what the SGE was doing directly beneath it. So it was quite sort of jarring experience. And it also, this is what I've just said, and it also was very, very slow to load. So you had this experience where you'd load up a search result, and then there'd be a 20-second delay, and then suddenly this big AI result would pop up and shift everything around, which is exactly what Google have been telling us. Someone in chat says the glue on pizza memory. There's lots of these sort of crazy examples from the time. The Google has been telling us not to have layout shift on our sites for quite a few years now, right? For about 4 or 5 years now. And then here they were doing that in their own search results in a huge way. So SGE, as it was at launch, was pretty egregiously bad. It also, so the result had sort of a few featured sites that you might click through to, these sort of preview links, but they kind of curiously were not sites that you would expect to see ranking in organic. They were often much worse sites than were ranking in organic, or sites that had been penalized in organic years ago, sometimes sites from the wrong market. There are a lot of stories about Indian market sites ranking in the US, for example. It seemed basically like SGE was just not done very well. They'd thrown something together in the 6 weeks that they had because they were caught off guard by Bing. It wasn't a good look. So myself at the time and many others predicted that Google wouldn't go forward with this, or at least they would modify it pretty heavily before they did. I was convinced that Google would not undermine their flagship product, being Google Search, with something this bad. But I was wrong. Google did improve SGE, but they didn't improve it as much as they should have before they rolled it out to the general public in the first half of last year. So they also changed the name, so it went from being SGE, so Search Generative Experience, to being AI Overviews. Yeah, someone says in the chat, Indian localized URLs still showing up in the US for a lot of products. Yeah, that's absolutely true. AI Overviews are, and indeed Google's algorithm in general, still seems to have a problem with this, but it's not as bad as it was during the beta. But yeah, that's kind of the story of this in general. AI Overviews are not as bad as SGEs were, but they still, certainly when they launched, nearly a year ago were not great. And they've improved since, but they're still not amazing even now. So it's still kind of surprising that these exist. And I think a lot of it is to do with that embarrassment. Google hates to be embarrassed. They hate to be made look stupid by Bing. So I think their hand was kind of forced, both by the market, by investors and internally. We also, during last year, we started to see other AI-generated result types, not just those big, what we call capital O AI overviews at the top. So this is, we called it at the time a lowercase o AI overview. So this is actually a knowledge panel, and then in it, the blurb in the knowledge panel has an AI disclaimer saying AI overviews are experimental. So this is kind of a different format. And there are a few other sort of result types like this. None of them have become particularly common. So where are we now? Just to recap the present day. So I've just talked about sort of the history here. So this is what they look like mostly on desktop today. You've got this big above the fold result, some formatted text with these little links. You see the sort of chain symbols. These are tiny links. They don't actually go directly to another site. They sort of open a preview of another site. It's almost like they open another search result actually. And then on the right, you've got Google doesn't have an official name for these. I call these preview links because this is a preview of another site and you can click directly through and it goes straight to another site. So if you want to appear in AI overview, you want to appear in these ones on the right. They're the sort of quality, the quality appearance. The ones on the left are a little bit of, a little bit underwhelming. There we go. So yeah, at the moment we have them appearing and tracked in 100 markets. No EU markets right now, which I don't think is a coincidence. I think there are regulatory barriers for Google there. I think quite a while ago now, nearly a year ago, I heard a Googler say that was because of where the data was stored. There might be some truth to that, but I bet there's more to it. I know that in France, for example, Google was successfully sued for featured snippets because they were sort of quoting a site without their permission and this kind of thing. That this goes much further than featured snippets. So yeah, I think there are reasons beyond just data centers why Google doesn't want to do this in the EU. And we've also seen, as I sort of alluded to just now, limited experiments with other AI result types. So I'll talk a little bit later about AI-organized. We've also seen very rarely AIO adverts and some other things like that. So this, just to recap, this is the agenda that I said we're going to talk about. So yeah, we're going to now that giving you some context, we're going to go through each of these aspects of sort of the AIO situation today and what I think it means. So the methodology, so for all of the data that you see today, what I've done is I've got 11,500 keywords. So the way I did this was I took the top 500 keywords in Google Keyword Planner for a bunch of different verticals, threw them together along with a bunch of modifier terms. So that gave me 11.5. So things like a keyword with cheap added, with best added, with free added, this kind of thing, with near me. So that gave me 11,500 keywords to play with. I then did that across 2 devices and smartphone and desktop, 2 locations. So 11,500 times 2 times 2, so it's 46,000 keywords, and that's the data set I'm sharing with you today. And all of this data is from a snapshot I took earlier this month. So it's pretty recent. Yep. So where and how often are these appearing right now? Well, it does vary quite a bit. So here you've got sort of US versus UK, and you can see there's a big difference. So across this keyword set, and this will vary a lot according to what kind of keyword set you're playing with, as you'll see in a moment. But across this particular keyword set, we're seeing about 11% in the US and about 6% in the UK. And that's been pretty stable for a while, actually. I'm not seeing this particularly climbing up or down anymore. What I would say, though, as I mentioned, is that if you have a site in certain sectors, as I'm about to show you, this number would look very different. So this is just for this particular corpus, but it is the same keywords between these different markets and devices. So I just want to briefly introduce the concept of search intent funnels in case you've not heard of this. So something that we like to do at Moz and that we're introducing to Stat as well is being able to tag and store keywords by intent. So you sort of got informational keywords at the top of the funnel, and then as you work your way down the funnel, you've got these other search intents for increasingly sort of commercial keywords, and then navigational at the bottom where you're just looking for a specific website. So something that we see is that AI overviews are overwhelmingly a informational search feature. That's where they appear in the funnel. So if you're searching for something with a sort of a high purchase intent, the video recording will be available later, Ronnie. So yeah, and Melt asks, are these keywords for a particular theme, topic, or particular niche, shopping, tourism, finance? So as I said, I think there were 20 different verticals. The ones you've mentioned there were all among them, but it's an even spread. So it's 500 keywords per vertical across 20 something different verticals. So there's a broad spread here. And I think, as you'll see in a moment, when we get into the individual verticals, the trends can be very different depending on what sector you're in. But yeah, the main takeaway I want you to have here is that although we saw 10 to 11% overall across both markets, for the informational sort of really carried it heavily. You're not that likely to see an AI overview for a very transactional keyword, which is not a coincidence, right? Because that's the kind of keywords that Google sells ads on. Google makes their money on transactional and to some extent commercial keywords. That's where they're able to sell ads and able to get good cost per click. And so they're not cannibalizing that with AI overviews. They're putting AI overviews on the kinds of queries where they don't sell ads. And also, you could say that what the AI overview is doing is better suited to that kind of intent as well. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Gilbert. So the prevalence of this, as I just mentioned, does vary quite significantly by vertical. So here I've got a variety of verticals. Now, this chart is only for transactional queries. So I literally just told you, right, that transactional queries basically don't have AI overviews at all. Don't worry if you can't read this, by the way, I'll call it out in a second. But I just told you that AI overviews don't have a transaction, I just said that transactional queries almost never have AI overviews. There's two big exceptions. So the bar on the left, you can see standing out, that's science and nature. So science and nature transactional queries, of which, you might say that's a weird combination, and that might be why. They do tend to have, well, they're certainly much more likely to have AI overviews, and similar in health. So, transactional queries in the health space are far more likely to have an AI overview than other verticals. You also see these two that stand out a little bit. So travel and tourism and retail stores, not quite to the same extent, but these are two verticals that in general don't have too many AI overviews, but from transactional, they actually do. For mid-funnel, so this is for commercial queries. So yeah, as I say, middle of the funnel, finance stands out a little bit. And the reason I call this out is because for other stages in the funnel, finance doesn't really get AI overviews. And you can imagine why, right? Because it's kind of your money or your life. But for mid-funnel, they do. Kind of curious. I'll show you an example in a second. But lastly, for informational queries, there are exceptions as well. So informational queries, in general, we see a lot of AI overviews, but some verticals don't get them. So this one on the left is apparel. We didn't see any AI overviews for informational apparel keywords. And then this one in the middle is home and garden. Same, we didn't really see anything. So here's an example. This is a commercial keyword, so we wouldn't expect to see anything. And this is budgeting apps. And you can see there's this big AI overview showing the different budgeting apps. And I'm not sure if you can see it on the slide, but there's actually an ad directly beneath this. So Google is cannibalizing an ad on a finance keyword, probably quite a high cost per click keyword, with an AI overview. So this is very unusual, but in the finance sector, we do see it. Similarly, this is an informational keyword about a particular type of plant that I can't pronounce. But in the UK, it's often called false goat's beard, which is obviously perfect. Why would you say that's nonsense? What do you mean? It makes perfect sense. But anyway, this is an informational keyword. I would say this is ripe for having a AI overview that explains these sort of two different names and what they mean. And yet we don't have that. We have a sort of old-fashioned search result. So there are exceptions in both directions to what I'm saying about the funnel. Yeah, as I've said, there's no hard rules when these can and can't appear. So who appears in them? That's the next big question, right? I called out that there were sites that were appearing in these sort of preview links. Who is actually appearing in those? So I briefly talked about this a moment ago. So I have my own terminology for talking about these because there isn't an official Google terminology. So I'll just tell you what I mean by that. So these ones on the right, these are direct links through to to potentially your website. And I call these preview links because you've got this little preview. And then these ones on the left where you've got the picture of a link, the chain link, I call these citation links. And what they do is they open up another SERP. They open up a second SERP like this one you see on the right. So I sort of count these as being a little bit less valuable, and we do that in the stat app as well. So these don't have the same ranking implications as the ones on the left. So I talked earlier about sort of the commonality between regular organic and AI overview ranking, and that it used to be that they seemed very different. That has converged over time. So now we see a much bigger overlap between AI overview links and the 10 organic links below. So overall, it's about 55%. 55% of links that are in the AI overview are also featured in the top 10 organic results. That's a pretty big overlap. It's not as big as you might expect, but it's a pretty big overlap. There's a big difference here between desktop and smartphone, you'll notice. This is mainly because of how the AI overviews appear on smartphone. So often on smartphone, you don't get any of those preview links. You just get the sort of smaller citation links, and those smaller citation links are much less well correlated. So that's why you're with organic. So that's why you're seeing a difference here. Most 9 or 10 ranks today. Well, the concept, Carolyn, the concept of a page in search results is also becoming more nebulous. But yeah, I know what you mean. If I compare sort of some key metrics, so see at Moz, Stat and Moz are assist companies, and at Moz we have domain authority and brand authority that we sometimes look at for search results. So if we look at the organic top 10, the organic top 3, and the organic top 1, and how that compares, so the AI overview, it sort of has a comparable, the average domain authority of a link in an AI overview is sort of comparable on average to a top 10 link. It's lower than ranking top 1 or top 3. So these are typically smaller sites, maybe didn't do as well in organic, but they are competitive. They are similar to top 10. The brand authority is an interesting story. So the brand authority of sites that are appearing in AI overviews is actually lower than sites that are ranking in organic. And I think that's to do with what I was saying before about how Google has been slower to roll out certain algorithm updates in AI overviews. And it's almost like AI overviews are using an old version of the Google algorithm. So we've all seen recently, right, how brand seems to be almost too much of a factor in search results. You've seen like sites like Forbes Advisor, for example, have been getting a lot of sometimes bad press about, they're ranking almost too well because they're a big brand. And Google has been calling them out with things like site reputation abuse policy. And we've also seen, I've done some research in the past on the helpful content updates, which they seem like they're heavily influenced by brand. And we saw that brand authority had a huge correlation with whether you were hit by helpful content updates in a negative way. So it's almost like AI overviews have a sort of pre-helpful content update algorithm. So they're valuing domain authority highly, but they're not, or Google's own version, of course, but they're not valuing brand authority so highly, which is an interesting picture. So yeah, as I say, it seems to be sort of a lagged version of the regular Google algorithm, so we should expect it to catch up over time. Ronnie in the chat asks, if a website ranked in AI overview, will this info appear in tools such as SEMrush? We can talk about that a little bit later. I don't want to particularly call out individual competitors. What I will say is a lot of SEO tools do not display AI overview rankings, but Stat does, and that's why I'm speaking about it today, right? So, how do these search results actually behave? So there's a heavy co-occurrence with similar features. So this is similar to what I was talking about earlier with the search generative experience, where it still feels like there's a bit of an overlap, and I guess that's because the algorithm has to work in the EU as well, where they still don't have AI overviews. So, for example, we see on average, feature snippets appear on about 4.6% of searches, but on AIO searches or searches with AIOs appearing, feature snippets appear 23% of the time. So there's a huge overlap where Google is generally showing both of these features together a lot more than you would expect, even though they kind of have the same functionality. And the same with things to know and found on the web, which are kind of similar to that preview functionality. Think about organic click-through rate when you've got these big features appearing next to each other. You've got an AI overview and then you've got a feature snippet. You could imagine it could be quite poor. And these are already on searches that would have been quite low click-through rate. So informational searches that already had a feature snippet, you can imagine they've not been getting a lot of clicks for a long time, right? So maybe there's not much lost here, but this is something that you have to assess really for your own site. So what I'd recommend you do is in Stat or a tool of your choice, create a tag for an individual page and then track AI overview appearance for that tag. So in this case, I've created a tag for a page on moz.com, learn/SEO/title tag. And I'm looking at the share of voice of AI overviews over time. And I could obviously export this chart. And then I could compare that with the click-through rate chart exported from Google Search Console for the same page. So I could see whether when the AI overview is appearing a lot for this page, does that mean that the click-through rate is also gone down? Or I could compare that kind of relationship, right? You can also, I should mention, this is very anecdotal. I've heard quite a few people saying that actually in their own studies, they found AI overviews, if it's on a SERP that already had a feature snippet, it's actually a higher click-through rate than the feature snippet was. Now, maybe that's not saying much, but that could be interesting. Again, you're going to have to look at your own site for this. There's also this old trick of, this has been around for a couple of years, where you can track feature snippets using Google Tag Manager by pulling out a particular part of the query string. This works for AI overviews as well. So you can see this chart is from Moz's Google Analytics, and you can see the AI overview snippets that people are using to access this page in our analytics. So yeah, just to, I'm sorry, I'm sort of reading the chat as I go and seeing some interesting points. So yeah, there are a bunch of different SEO tools that do track AI overviews, but what I would look at quite closely is the percentage that they say them appear at, because Google doesn't want you scraping these kind of features, right? Because these features are expensive to generate for Google. So you'll see a lot of SEO tools will say that they track AI overviews, but then they actually only appear on 0.1% of searches or something like that. And you know that that can't be right. So that's the kind of thing that you should be looking for. So AI organized searches. So this is 4 months old now. Google introduced this idea of AI organized searches. It is sort of buried in this blog post that was mostly about smartphone features. It's kind of weird. But it sounds really big and impressive. So the slides will be linked after, Ashley, so you can get it from those. So so they said you'll now see a full page experience with relevant results organized just for you. You can easily explore content and perspectives from across the web, including articles, videos, forums, and more. So it sounds really impressive, right? In reality, it didn't actually do very much. So currently, we only see AI organized searches on US EN smartphones and pretty much exclusively for recipe terms. So this is at the moment showing up for us on 0.2% of keywords. So this is actually the full list. So of all the 46,000 keywords I mentioned to you just now, this is the full list of keywords that had AI organized searches. And here's an example. But basically, this is a top recipes carousel, right? This is a regular feature. Yeah, lead, that's exactly the kind of problem I'm talking about that a lot of tools are run into as well. So yeah, this is a top recipes carousel. It says organized with AI, but it's basically the same as the existing one, a normal non-AI top recipes carousel. And then beneath, there's another top recipes carousel that's been renamed to something that was to do with the search term, right? So that's all that it does. That's all that AI organized is doing right now. So it's really not a big deal, but we'll see where it goes. So I'm coming up to the sort of target time I want to spend on this. So I just want to briefly talk about how this should affect your SEO. So I think this is right now, this is about AI overviews. It's not really about AI organized. AI organized, as I say, seems like a very minor feature right now. It wouldn't surprise me if Google abandoned it altogether, but we'll see. But right now, it's not doing much. So this is about AI overviews. So the first thing you need to do is tracking. A bunch of people have been talking about this in the sidebar. You need to have an idea for both how often these screenshots, both from Stat, but other tools do this. Some other tools, not all. You need to have an idea for both how often they're appearing for the keywords that you're interested in, and how often you own that feature. So that's what these two charts are showing. You can see I've changed the toggle on the top from owned to all, owned on the left, all on the right. So in this case, I can see that there's a pretty consistent appearance of AI overviews for this set of keywords, but the percent that I'm appearing in is actually going down. So that might be something that I want to take a look at, right? Have a look at who is ranking in them and how that resembles organic. Right now, I would not recommend seriously throwing your organic strategy under the bus to cater for AI overviews, partly because they do seem to be converging on the same algorithm. But you might want to have a look and see if there's something that the pages that are appearing have in common that yours doesn't do, for example. As I say, I would care much more about these preview links, which are the ones like I've just called out in the ranking table, than the citation links below. And we also show you a picture of the in-app. We show you a picture of the overview itself in case that's useful for you to understand what's going on. So what might you do differently with this information? So I think organic, this has been true for about a decade. It's only getting more true over time. Organic top of funnel is really high effort and low reward. This was true as soon as they introduced feature snippets. This was true as soon as they introduced knowledge panel, and both of those features are more than a decade old, right? More than 12 years old, actually. So, I'm not saying much that's new here, but it's just getting more and more true over time. The organic top of funnel, you have to be really careful in your keyword research. Exceptions do exist. As I say, there's these two sectors, apparel and home and garden, and maybe for your site, maybe there is still a big opportunity for informational organic. You need to check yourself. Short term, you can find these kinds of opportunities. So as I say, look for informational terms that don't have AI overviews, don't have feature snippets, don't have knowledge graph. This is an example. Search for avocado toast, very clearly informational. Top one result is regular 10 blue links organic. So this is the kind of thing you should be looking for in your keyword research, right? This is an opportunity. And broadly, trying to appear is, as I called out that there was a big overlap with organic. Broadly, you should be doing the same things you're doing for organic. There could be an overlap with this sort of newly emerging field of generative engine optimization, which is the same kind of thing you might be doing to appear in ChatGPT answers, for example. There's one paper that's been written about this, and pretty much every article I've seen about it cites this one paper. They found a few things. So they found that citing sources, citing statistics, and using a sort of an authoritative tone all help to appear in ChatGPT answers. These are the kind of things you might do for EEAT, right? So this shouldn't be alien to anyone writing for SEO in 2025. So what happens next? What's my sort of near-term prediction? So Google might try and push these further down the funnel. Back when we were in beta, back when it was SGEs, there were these more commercial results. So this is an example where there's sort of listings for bikes inside the AI result. They might try and go down this road again. It wouldn't surprise me. They also might merge with other features. So you've got a lot of these cases where there's a feature snippet and then an AI overview, and they have exactly the same information. You might as well, if you're Google, try and merge these. I think the only reason they haven't merged them so far is because of the EU, and they'll have to find a way around that eventually. And then lastly, as I said, the bar for informational content is just getting higher and higher and higher. As soon as they introduce feature snippets, if you're answering simple questions with your content, how old is Vin Diesel, that wasn't going to get a click anymore. It's going to be answered directly in the search. As soon as they introduce knowledge graph, some of these more complex questions could be answered. You're not going to get a click for a weather query anymore. You're not going to get a click for a currency conversion query. And now it's gotten a bit further. And if I want an explanation of a reasonably simple concept, it's going to be answered directly in the SERP. So this bar is getting higher and higher and higher. And if you are writing informational content, if you are a publisher, you have to think about that really carefully in terms of what your value is that Google is not going to be able to replicate. For some publishers, that's easy. If you're the Financial Times, you're not sweating. But for some publishers, it's harder. Right, so as I said, we're into a bit of a choose your own adventure now. So there should be a button coming up soon where if you want to see a bit of a demo of Stat and how it handles some of these features I've talked about, you can press the button that's just appeared and you'll be taken through into that breakout room. If, on the other hand, you have some questions or you want to hear other people's questions and our answers, you can stay here with myself and Heather, and we'll be answering some of those now.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Great stuff. I told you we would have a lot of questions. So there's definitely a lot in the questions tab. So we're going to get started at the top. And with that, let's see. Okay. Let's start with, what would you say to a client who is asking about an AIO-led strategy?
I'd say be really careful with that. I think partly because the kind of queries these are appearing for are so informational. If you're a publisher and you kind of, your bread and butter is informational search, then you certainly can't ignore AI overviews, right? If you're maybe an e-commerce or lead gen site, then it's going to be a bit riskier for you to go all in on informational search, especially now that it's gotten this much harder. I think if you are going down that way though, then I would be careful not to do anything that undermines your regular organic, because it does look like the two are converging, as I've said. So if you're doing something that you think is risky for organic but good for AI overviews, then what you're saying is that 6 months from now it's going to be risky for both. So be really careful with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, so let's take this down so we can see, so everyone can see what these questions are. All right. So question from Karen Kelly, with the most at 8 votes. Karen asks, Tom, do you have a summary or template of the main tactics that you're using to make sure that your site is optimized to be included in AIOs?
I don't have a template. That's a good idea. I should do that. But no, I can give you a brief outline though. So I think, as I say, stage one is decide whether you want to try and rank on AI overview SERPs at all. So maybe it would make more sense in your keyword research to find SERPs that don't have AI overviews and appear for those. And just to double down on the point I was making during the presentation, you need to be careful a little bit with SEO tools on this, because a lot of SEO tools, they're, let's say, trying to keep their costs down, and they're acquiring SERPs in a way that they technically can see overviews, but in reality they don't. So you're not going to be able to see them accurately in those tools. But I don't want to get too much into that. But what I would say is that, yeah, your keyword research should be savvy. Like, maybe you should not be going after keywords that have AI overviews on. And if you are, then that needs to be a sort of thing, something that you're doing with full awareness, right? If you are going after it, then what I would do is I would start by doing everything you've done before, everything you do normally. And then if you're not appearing in the AI overview, I would look at what the sites that are appearing are doing and just do it like that. So just have a look at what is the type of result that Google seems to be answering or quoting from. And whether, because it could be that it's a different kind of site, right? It could be that if it's say it's a search for, I don't know, Germany, a really generic term like that, Germany could mean many things. You're a travel site, but the 3 sites that are being quoted in the AI overview are all like about history and geography of Germany or something like this. Then you're probably not going to be able to optimize your travel site to get into that overview, so it's not worth trying. If, on the other hand, they're all sites that are just like yours, but maybe structure their content in a slightly different way, then that's something you could learn from.
Okay. Question from Kevin. So I think you may have seen these in the chat. So echoing what Cameron and Ridlichers, that was horrible. So I apologize. Their question: is there any correlation to sites that are cited in AIO that utilize schema markup versus those that do not?
I haven't seen a large scale. I haven't conducted a large scale study on this, but the answer from what I have seen is no. There doesn't seem to be a strong link. And to me, I'm almost disappointed in that it almost feels like schema is being a little bit left behind, because schema was kind of providing this layer for a type of search engine that needed it. And now increasingly this kind of AI-led approach that Google is using in AI overviews, and we're presumably going to see in ChatGPT-based search engines, doesn't seem to rely on schema to identify concepts to the same degree. So yeah, I don't see any link with schema. If you have seen data like this, though, I'd be very curious and almost relieved. So please do let me know.
Question from Alex: have you seen any unique similarities between Google's AIOs and results populated in search disruptors like Perplexity and Search GPT? Is there a way to optimize for all AI in search?
No, I don't see a big similarity. I think AI overviews are much closer to what we're used to as SEOs than those tools are. Obviously, Search GPT does draw a lot on Bing, so maybe there's a bit of overlap there. To be honest, right now I'd say the way to optimize for all AI in search is to optimize for Google. The amount of clicks being driven by all of the other AI players put together is lower than DuckDuckGo. So if you didn't have a DuckDuckGo strategy, I'm not sure you should have a search GPT strategy. It's maybe that will change over time, but personally, I think Google is pretty robust in their sort of monopoly. So yeah, I would focus for now, just like we always used to say about Bing, right? I would focus on Google and just keep an eye on the others. And if you do start to see that you're getting more referrals from those other sources, then maybe start to pay more attention.
Great. So hold on. So going back to the presentation, Viviana is asking, for the graph on informational queries, high on science, what type of LLMs was used to get the data?
So I didn't use, so that if you're asking about how I'm categorizing the different intents, so how I'm categorizing science keywords into informational science keywords versus commercial science keywords versus transactional science keywords, which I guess is what you're asking here. I used the Moz Intent API to do that. So that does use natural language processing, but it's not like an off-the-shelf LLM product. We've got posts up on the Moz site in terms of how that system works. But yeah, it's and if you'll allow me to plug it briefly, it's a $5 a month API, so you should check it out.
Awesome. We'll get the link in the chat for everyone. I'll go grab that. Melanie asks, will AI motivate companies to pay for ads just to appear above the generated box? What do you think?
It's a great question. So for now, no, right? Because for now, the kind of queries that have AI overviews don't have ads, which I'm sure is not coincidence. Google knows where their bread is buttered, right? I think if we do start seeing them push overviews down the funnel, if we do start seeing them put ads into AI overviews, then yeah, just like all of these other features that seem to push down organic, it is a bit of an incentive to pay and play, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I lost my place. Sorry, body. Okay, so Amy asks, does stat track all links in the AIO preview and cited both?
So we've actually changed our policy on this recently. At the moment, what we're doing is we're showing you that top 3, the preview links, and we're giving those the same kind of ranking position that we give to other search features. So we have 2 ranks displayed in stat. There's what we call base rank, which is just sort of 10 blue links organic. And nothing in the overview gets a base rank because it's not 10 blue links organic. And then we have what we call just rank, which includes search features, things like discussion forums, or if you're appearing in an image cast, something like this. And we do give those 3 preview links ranks. We are not currently giving ranks to those citation links unless they're the only thing that appears, and then we only give them 1, because it isn't a direct link to a site. It's a link to another search result. It's more like a PAA in a way. It's worse than PAA because that does contain a direct link to a site. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird one where we're taking feedback from this on customers, but recently we've decided that these citation links don't really merit because they're very small, they're hard to click on. We don't think people are clicking them on a lot, and then when you do, you still don't get sent through to the client site. So yeah, we're not giving those. We're not tracking those as a ranking position right now.
Chris asks, are long tail queries becoming more prevalent? Any data trends on this?
That's a great question. I don't know. I would love to know. You would need clickstream data to answer this question, right? Like it's nobody other than Google knows what all of the keywords are. But I would. Yeah, I would love to see some information on this. My instinct is that maybe in the long term, that will be a thing. And I see Google is trying to push that behavior more and more. I don't know if you've noticed on a lot of search results now, there's like search term modifiers that you can click and it just adds on. So you'll search, like hotel rooms, and then there'll be a button beneath the search bar that says for a family of 4. And you click on the family of 4 button, and then it takes you to a search for hotel rooms for a family of 4 or something like this. So Google, I think, is definitely trying to encourage that behavior. I've not seen any data on it. I'd be really curious, though.
So talked about long keywords, or long tail keywords, but Carrie Baskin, not Carol Baskin for anyone during, COVID could be related. You never know, but does it pay to invest in long form content like case studies of 1,500 words, or is it better to invest in short form 750?
I don't think the game has changed on this much. if it is worth going for that keyword at all, which is a valid question always, if it is worth going for that keyword at all, then which of these two is the better is the result that you think the user is going to want to see? And I know that's a boring answer. I know that's something Google would say, but ultimately that is how it goes. Sometimes some questions are best answered with something that is to the point. Sometimes you need a really thorough breakdown, and there's not a simple answer to that.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about so much. I'm hearing it webinar after webinar and all over, is that it really comes down to quality of the content and what you're trying to achieve. So not necessarily the quantity of the words. Larissa asks, are there proactive steps we can take to reduce hallucinations in AIOs?
Do you work for Google, Larissa? If you work for Google, yes. I'm sure there are many. I'm not the expert on that, but you really should be working on this. If you are not working for Google, I'm not sure there's much you can do. I personally think the quality of information in the AI reviews has improved greatly, but it's still pretty bad. Certainly if I search for any topic that I actually know about, and then I read the answer, I'm like, oh, and then I go and read the feature snippet beneath, and I'm like, oh, that's right. So yeah, it's still a big problem, this. And as SEOs, I'm not sure there's much we can do other than hope Google gets it together.
Yeah.
That's a good shout, actually. Emma Jane puts in the chat, always click on the report issue button to Google. You're a great public citizen. I'm not always so generous with my time.
Yeah. That was a great point. Matthew asks, if AI overviews become more commonplace on transactional commercial intent searches, what factors do you think will influence who will be mentioned? Best of lists, any advice there?
It's a really interesting question. My knee-jerk on this is that it would work a lot like popular products. So it would be about product feeds and how you rank in product feeds according to quantity of sales and competitive pricing and this kind of thing, reviews. So yeah, that would be my guess. That certainly for e-commerce stuff, it will be it'll work just like Google's current product-based features do. And I could also imagine them using the same systems that currently power Google Maps. So it'd be like local SEO for some queries. If you're looking for restaurants or something like that, then that can be quite a commercial query. So yeah, that would be my guess. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
Another opinion piece. Tom, any concerns about Google's monopoly following the antitrust trial with DOJ? Department of Justice, for those who aren't sure.
I don't have any new concerns about Google's monopoly. I mean, Google definitely does have multiple monopolies, and they definitely do abuse them, would be my view. It has been alleged, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a lawyer. But what I would say is in some ways, as SEOs, we're almost better off with the devil we know. The success of Google does tend to mean the success of SEOs. Certainly, we have benefited a great deal from their meteoric rise over the last 20 years. So in a world where Google loses informational search to maybe like Siri or something like that, and they lose product search to Amazon, and all that's left is navigational search, as SEOs we're in a much more awkward point, because it is much less obvious that what we do benefits those platforms, and I'm sure there will be ways that you can work to optimize for whatever comes after Google. SEO has been Google has changed a lot in the last 20 years, and SEO has been a very innovative industry. But I do think that in some ways, the demise of Google is the thing that most, if there's ever going to be a death of SEO, that would be the event, right? So yeah, I have a bit of I have mixed feelings about Google's monopolistic position.
No, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's a lot of SEOs out there that share that same kind of sentiment. So Rohan asks, and we're actually having a webinar about this tomorrow, Rohan. So if you're free, you can join us. Is brand credibility, does it play an important factor in appearing in AIOs?
Right now, it looks like no, but I think it will. So I shared that data in the deck, right, on how at the moment AI overview appearance is much more correlated with domain authority than brand authority. And we've seen the opposite with We've seen the opposite with organic over the last couple of years. I expect AI overviews to converge with organic on that. I think brand authority will be an important consideration for AI overviews in the future, but right now it's a surprising free-for-all.
I think it's important. I think branding is really important from a, from the user perspective and whether or not you're recognized by them. And I think that plays a factor in some of those click-throughs. So, brand reputation and sentiment out there is important. I know a lot of brands are working on that branding 101 that they've kind of not had to do over the last few years. So, all right. So Zach, how do you see AIOs influencing the way we create blog content for SEO, especially informational content? Will blogs be less relevant with the rise of voice search or conversational AI?
I'm not too worried about voice search conversational AI. I do think, as I say, that that search results are answering more and more from the search result, and they're almost informational search is a bit of a loss leader to keep you using Google. Google doesn't make money on those queries either. So I think this trend of and I'm not saying this is what Zach is doing or anyone else is doing, but it has been a trend, something that a lot of SEOs and a lot of SEO agencies have done in the last decade, where there's this trend sort of after sort of low effort link building became a bit less ubiquitously successful. And then there's that sort of era of algorithm chasing. And now it seems like the go-to play for a lot of agencies, if they just want to do something and not think about it too hard, is to churn out a load of blog content. And I think that tactic is somewhat past its best. I think you have to be more nuanced now. You can still do it, and there are still verticals where it'll work. But if you're just churning out loads of low-effort content where the person writing it doesn't know what they're talking about, and it's not an amazing answer to the question, and it's kind of the same as every other article on the same topic, that's increasingly low ROI. And as SEOs, that's often what we think about when we think about blog content. Now, if you're producing blog content, Moz has a blog, I write on it regularly. We're trying to serve users that come to us directly. They're even going via Google. They come to us directly for our blog content, or they come via our socials or something like that. We're trying to answer questions that aren't well answered in an AI overview. We're trying to be topical and speak to sort of difficult and complex topics. I think if that's how you view your blog, you can still do all of those things. If, on the other hand, you're just taking the top 200 keywords out of your keyword tool of choice and then paying an intern to write 200 blog posts of 750 words or more, I think this is a dying tactic.
I agree. We've been doing so much talking about the customer journey and creating content for those specific stages. And I think that this is part of what you just said. I mean, it's not just creating a bunch of content for search engines anymore. And Rudiger says, more zero clicks will come, churning out fluff won't cut it anymore. Totally agree. Yeah. So, Tom, I think we've got one more question in here. Let's see, where did it go? Hold on, it's under the new list. Oh, there's a couple more that have been added in here. I told you we would not have a lack of questions.
You're right. I genuinely thought we might not have 20 minutes worth of questions, but we easily have. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
And there's still more. So we'll make sure anything we don't get answered, we'll get it over to the stat team that they can follow up. But here's a question from Emma. Does creating FAQ pages for product pages, for example, that address multiple topics or keywords, do they help with the visibility in AI?
Really boring answer, but I don't know. I would. It sounds like it might, doesn't it? It sounds plausible, but yeah, I don't know. I've not seen data on that. That would be a curious thing to test.
Let's see. Chris asks, how will Google balance the need to send traffic to websites? Which I don't think they feel the need to do that now, but how would they balance that need with user desire to get answers? On the
I think my spicy takes are the same thing. Google does want to send traffic to websites because that's how they make money, right? That's how Google makes 90% of their money, is by sending traffic to websites in ads. So this is why I think you're not seeing AI overviews on transactional searches. And I think that will happen, but Google is to be really careful with it. And the AI overviews that you see on transactional searches, wherever you click on them, Google will make some money. So it'll either be covered in ads, or it'll be covered in product listings, or it'll be covered in map links, whatever it might be. Because yeah, Google cannot afford to be in a situation where you make a transactional search and then don't click on anything, because then Google makes no money at all. I think these informational searches, we should almost see it as a good thing that Google is answering these directly on the search, because what Google is doing there is keeping users using Google. As SEOs, we do not particularly want to see people not using Google anymore and just using Amazon and ChatGPT to replace what Google does all in one place. So what Google is doing is they're providing a good enough experience for these informational queries that I'm not like, oh, I can't be bothered to click through to a website, I'm just going to use Siri or ChatGPT or whatever. They're keeping you using Google. They're making Google good enough in that sense. It's not like Siri is going to take you to a website either for these kinds of query. And that, because you're kept in for these informational queries, because Google provides good experience for those, you also use them for the transactional queries, and that's when you actually end up clicking through to a website, and both Google and the owner of the website hopefully make some money. So yeah, I think these are a similar game.
Yeah. With that, I think we actually have, I'm looking through, there's been a couple stragglers, but some repetitions. I think we made it through most of them, Tom. Thank you. Thank you for the information, for everything that you've shared. Mike, let's see. Mike Sanders says Google ad revenue is up 10% year over year. That is not an accident. To our point, Lee Macklin says, putting the customer visitor at the center of that blog strategy that we talked about. So agree there, Lee. So yeah, Tom, tell the people where to find you and any last words you want to leave them with.
Yeah, thank you very much. So there are links in the sidebar to various resources that I've spoken from today. You can always find us at either getstat.com, or we're at getstat on most social channels. I'm at thkappa on Blue Sky, on Twitter, on probably Instagram even. I wouldn't know. I have used that, I swear. But yeah, come and find me if you have any follow-up questions, and come and find Stat if you want to see some of the data or the tools we use today.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who joined the breakout room. With that, we're going to let you all go. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next SEJ webinar. Bye, all. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.